So we're going to start on this idea of identifying your crux tension. Identifying your crux tension. I use the word crux. It's a word that's used. It's a word that's used in rock climbing often. And if anyone's climbed here, normally what happens is if you go to a really good climbing area, you research it ahead of time because there's one or two climbs that are classics. So you find the classic climb, and if it's a really good one, there'll be lots of local climbers around, and you ask a local, I'm going to try this climb, what's the crux move? What's the crux move? All that means is between where I'm standing on the ground and where I want to go, there's a lot of moves I have to make. You know, hand holds and foot holds and body movements. But out of all those moves, there's probably one that's make it or break it. It might be a hand hold, a foot hold, a body move, but if you can point it out to me, and for the whole time I just focus on getting that crux move, I don't have to worry about all the others. I don't know why it works, but it works. And the reason I'm telling you about this is that my work, my career has really focused primarily on this idea of managing tension. And I can tell you, based on the work I've done, that in the roles that you're in, at the level of profession you're in at Shoppers, the list of tensions that you manage every day, I couldn't even put them on a slide. You're just managing so many different tensions and complexities, and it's not helpful for a speaker or an author to say, here's the list, good luck. That's overwhelming. What I will tell you, though, is that out of the list, there's probably one or two that right now in your store is make it or break it. It might just be for you as a leader. It might be for the team you're leading, but you would say, you know what? If we manage that tension well, things go pretty well. When that tension's off, everything's off. And I had a chance to talk with a number of you, and I had a really long list, and I just kept shrinking it and shrinking it and shrinking it. And you told me these 10 probably would be the short list. You know, as professionals, we at Shoppers have to be optimistic and lead people towards the future, but also sometimes have people face things they'd rather not face and actually have conversations that people would rather avoid. We have to be optimistic and realistic. We have to have high expectations on ourselves, first and foremost, on our team. Expectations, though, only work when we also have grace, and we recognize we're not perfect all the time. So I need to create a culture that has high expectations and grace. We already said if we're going to be moving towards a shift towards service, that's going to take relationship building, and yet we can't lose our sight on task accomplishment. How do we do both of those things? A number of you told me that change stability matters right now, especially in an era of really trying to stick with basics and have processes and practices at work, stability-based, but we can't neglect new opportunities and staying relevant. Beyond that, cost and quality. There's a number of you, feels like every day, and especially an era where inflation's been an issue, and now we're thinking about what's 2025 going to look like. How do we keep prices fair, you know, for communities across the country, while at the same time making sure that we got good quality services and products? You know, beyond that, leadership often is about creating an environment where you can give people freedom to do their piece and do it well. Freedom only works, though, when there's a culture of accountability. I'm having this conversation with my son right now. He's 14, and I said, just so you know, you're in a space in life where there's more and more freedom given to you. That's actually the way it's supposed to work. The fine print, though, is with every bit of freedom we give you, there's more responsibility we're holding you to. And if we're not seeing the responsibility lived out, the freedom goes down. Well, apply that to your store, to your pharmacy. How do we create an environment where there's lots of freedom and ownership? We also have a great, responsible, accountable environment as well. You know, truth and tact. You communicate every day through email, meetings, conversations. You got to be truthful and candid and clear and get to the point, and you got to do it in a way that doesn't shut people down and that builds trust and relationships. So how do we communicate in a way that's both truthful and tactful? Structure and flexibility. Since the pandemic, especially in Canada, all the research would say that we have landed in an era where people expect more flexibility at work than ever before. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Flexibility can be a great thing so long as we know flexibility only works when it's held in tension with structure. And the more I want to lead in a way that has lots of flexibility, the more I have to be clear on the non-negotiables. And that's just the way it is around here. So can I create an environment that's high flexibility, high structure? You know, I was looking at even this Engage event and the level of service and care that everyone in these seats is expected to live out outside these rooms. You're caring for others all the time. Your staff, the people who walk through your doors. But you also know that if all you ever do all the time is care for others and you neglect what you need, you're actually not going to be useful for anyone. So how do you show up and create systems in your life that certainly probably weighted on serving others, but also allows you to focus on yourself and giving yourself what you need so you can show up well? And in some ways, that's linked to work and home. You know, leadership and taking on roles like you have, it sounds wonderful and glamorous, but a lot of people don't know the fine print. And that is the more responsibility on my shoulders, the harder it is to show up with vitality at home. And again, you're never going to solve that, but you want to be able to stand back and say, I feel kind of like breathing. I'm managing it well.